Okay, how's it going, everybody? I'm just gonna make a quick video today because I kind of premiered my web stuff back on YouTube about a week ago, and I was talking about how I'm not really excited about Star Wars Episode 9. God, you can see where my head's at. I'm not excited about Star Wars Episode 9. And then last night I did finally see it. My friend invited me. He got tickets for everybody. Um, and I finally saw it, and I was thinking about making a retrospect, waiting a week and then after just kind of absorbing everything, and then saying well, after all of the internet, explodes and then comes back to ground zero and then finally picks up the pieces and says what they really are thinking. Uh, but then I decided that I kind of feel like you need to strike while the iron's hot, and things can easily become, an outdated topic these days, like the next week. So who knows what's going to happen? So basically, I just decided I'm going to make a little video just saying this is what happens when I saw Star Wars Episode 9. Spoiler warnings for those of you who have not seen Star Wars Episode 9. Come back and watch this video when you are ready to talk about it. And I don't want to, I don't want to be accused of ruining your good time when you could have went in or something like that. So we are gonna, there is going to be spoilers flat out. I'm not going to dance around any issues. Come back to the video when you're ready to watch it. Today, I do have a little bit of gin to help grease the wheels, and I have Copper and Kings, American Brandy Company. This is the Moons of Jupiter, Moons of Juniper, which is actually one of the reasons that it had a good label, looked fine, it was recommended. Apparently, it has won some awards. They have 3 batches. This one I haven't tried the other 2, but the Moons of Juniper. Honestly, I feel like it's really strong. It's a little bitter. It tastes kind of medicinal. So I personally wouldn't recommend it, but I bought it. I might as well drink it. But it's not necessarily bad. I definitely think that the mixture of botanicals are really potent. I don't know if it's just the distilling process or whether the bottling. It's really, really strong. So if you want a very unique flavor, I will definitely recommend that. But if you just want good old-fashioned gin, honestly, like New Amsterdam and Bombay Sapphire are a little bit cheaper, and their flavors are generally pretty safe. But I am going to be drinking it today, so little gin time. So now let's just get into it. Also, drink responsibly, kids. And actually, kids don't drink. Adults who can drink legally, drink responsibly. There, said that mo. Star Wars. So Star Wars Episode 9. I finally saw it. I did make a video where I said I don't like any of the new movies. They do have good moments in them, but largely I just am not attuning to any of the characters, the story arcs, anything. Still haven't seen Solo. I'm not going to unless I have nothing better to do at this point, which is possible. The weather outside today sucks. I might just stay in and say, screw it, let's catch up on movies today. I don't know. But for now, I'm just going to get 9 out. I like The Mandalorian. I like Star Wars Rebels and stuff like that. So I do think that their shows are doing great. Their movies. And unfortunately, Episode 9, I have to say, it fell into the same category of I just don't give a crap. But in this case, for different reasons. So I'll just give a quick thing here. With 9, the problem starts when the movie immediately starts up, and that it does the Star Wars, the word crawl from the top, and it feels like they skipped a movie because they immediately jump into breaking news. There's this call from the Emperor Palpatine, who may or may not be alive, and it says that the First Order is revving up, and Kylo Ren's trying to find him because he wants to stop any competitors to his power. I guess Kylo is still trying to be a Sith. And then, of course, Rey and Finn and Poe Dameron and Princess Leia are fighting the good fight and trying to recover. And basically, they're both kind of also trying to figure out what's going on with this Palpatine not distress signal, but this Palpatine beacon. We'll call it the Palpy B. I don't know what else to call it. But it literally just throws this at you. And the movie starts from 0 to 60 in 1 second. This thing shifts into high gear immediately and stays in high gear the entire movie. There's only a few parts where it shifts down and does a little bit more not soft, but a slow suspense build kind of thing, and things like that. So I will say, just off the bat, I felt like I was in a 3-hour-long roller coaster ride, which means you get numb after a while. And I kind of just stopped caring about the majority of the movie. Kylo Ren finds Emperor Palpatine, and he's like, "I'm going to kill you because I want to be the last person to lead the Sith." And then Palpy is, of course, and now they did bring Ian McDiarmid back, which is great. I think that's the actor's name who plays Palpy. And I'm just going to call him Palpy because it's a joke. This whole movie is a joke. And I do feel like J.J. Abrams would jump back into this, behind the steering wheel, and he went, "Oh crap, Rian Johnson was kind of undoing a lot of what I planned." And I'm just going to jump back into it. And me and my friends have had theories that they just were like, crap, we have to take this back in an epic direction. And I've already said, and I'm not the only person, everybody's been saying for a while, Star Wars is bankrupt for ideas. And in this case, they were really bankrupt because they said, crap, we need a new big bad because Snoke is dead. And that's kind of who we were going to use, I guess. I don't know exactly. So we're going to bring back the corpse of Palpatine, who's being barely kept alive. And you find out that he has a plan, and he's like, "Snoke was my apprentice, and I trained him, boy. However, you are worthy of the Sith path, and I will give you the final order," which already is another joke. It's like, the First Order, you think, you didn't really focus on the fact that it's called the First Order. You just kind of realized it was a tribute to the Imperium, and the Resistance is a tribute to the Rebellion. And they were just kind of carrying that same motif. Well, they were like, he's like, "I call it the final order," which makes me joking. Like, I jokingly in my head went, first he was like, the first order was just that step one. Then there was the second order and third order. And then now he's just saying screw it and skipping to, he's doing the Home Alone thing. 1, 2, 10. Like, that's literally what he's doing. He's like, the final order. And it's like, why? I mean, I guess that was that supposed to be a surprise? Were we supposed to get the second or third order in the previous movie? Because we didn't. In fact, I don't even know what we got. So that's the thing. It just jumped the cliff, like hardcore. I didn't even know that there was a cliff there. So it's like, well, where's the dramatic arc here? I don't know. Well, the dramatic arc is Palpatine he gets Kylo Ren on his side. He says, "I'm going to give you the Imperium." And then what I found weird was Kylo Ren, apparently he's got like his boardroom of generals and leaders, and of course one of them kind of starts to express his distaste. And the problem with this movie is because of the momentum that doesn't let up, we're not allowed to really stop and appreciate anything, whether it's a joke, whether it's the action, whether it's a dramatic thing happening to somebody. And so, like, he chokes one of the guys like Darth Vader fashion, and then we see General Hux. General Hux is there, but apparently he's kind of downplaying his role. And then there's this other general who, I guess immediately, is General Pride, who's immediately, well, first off, they named General Pride. Really? Like, he couldn't go a little bit more original? I don't know. That's just so, General Bad Guy who thinks highly of himself. Granted, this is not the first time Star Wars did something like that. But, and then, of course, at some point, he's even contacting the Emperor, and it's like, how did he get his hotline? So he contacts the Emperor, and he's trying to gain favor, and the Emperor is like, "All right, General Pride, you sound worthy, I guess." And then you find out that early on, Poe and Finn are in the Millennium Falcon playing chess with Chewie, but then like they get one of their buddies is like, "We have a spy in their midst, and we want to relay some information." And then you find out that their informant dies, and then they're like, "We have a spy here." And then just to kill the mood, like, we find out that General Hux is actually the spy, which actually kind of makes sense because he was like, "I don't want this powerful douchebag in charge of the First Order. I thought I was going to kind of inherit it, but since Snoke's dead and he kind of just took over, and I can't fight him because he's got the Force, if I try to backstab him, he's going to see it coming. I can't win in a fist fight. I don't have the Force." So it makes sense that General Hux is like, "You know what? Screw it. I'm going to take my services elsewhere." And so he starts working with the Resistance. Unfortunately, as soon as he's revealed, the momentum kills any sort of impact or development that we could have had with this character. And that General Pride guy sees him and he's like wounded. And General Hux, he helps Finn and Rey and Chewie escape. He helps him escape. And then he's like, "Quick, shoot me because it needs to look like you overpowered me." And then I guess it was supposed to be funny because they shoot him. He's like, "Shoot me in the arm," and they shoot him in the leg, and he's like, "Ow!" And I'm like, was that supposed to be a joke? Or were they just, or like, what they should have done is just had him point the gun and go, "Why are you helping us?" And he doesn't really say a whole lot. So we just kind of assume that he's now with the good guy. But then literally less than a minute later, he's like he's got a cane and he's like walking into the committee room with the other generals. And Pride is like, "What happened?" And Hux is like, "They overpowered me and escaped." And then Hux I mean, the General Pride, without any sort of moment of analysis, just reaches over, grabs the blaster, and goes bam, and then he's like, uh, tell Lord Ren and the Emperor that we found our traitor, and then it hands it back, and there's like no time to breathe. There's no time to appreciate any of this. There's no subtlety on any level, and it's sad. It's like this movie had plenty of ideas. Well, part of the problem is it feels like they're trying to cram like two movies into one. It's kind of the same problem they had with Rogue One. But in this case, it's just they immediately bring up Palpatine. They have to justify his villainy again. The fact that they're going to that old hat is like, obviously you can tell that there's some mismanagement here. There's some miscommunication. There's characters they introduce, and not a whole lot, but they introduce some characters, and it feels like there was supposed to be more with them. Like Poe has this old lady, or he has this gal that she doesn't take her helmet off ever, but you do see her take, like, she removes like her visor. So you see her eyes at one point. And it's like they make jokes about how they don't like each other, they don't trust each other, and obviously they obviously kind of play around with the idea of like, hey, I've got the hots for you, and she's like, too bad. And he's like, darn, but I don't really care because okay, apparently that's their dance they've been doing. And then there's so many other just moments that I think are missed or misconceived. Like they get to this alien planet. And I think the joke was, and again, I think that I say joke because I think the movie was supposed to have funny moments, but it goes too fast and it's not well put together. They get to this desert planet, and they're like, there shouldn't be that many people here. But then it turns out there's an entire festival that's literally fully colored with smoke, and these people are doing like some Bollywood dancing just randomly in certain areas, like it's a festival, and these people have like tentacle faces. Not that original of an alien species, and like no sooner do they get there than apparently the Imperium suddenly arrives, because I guess they are just that hot on the trail. And then again, that happens way too much in this movie. The people are moving way too fast to different places, and there's no sense of like length and distance, and it makes me go like, well, so there's just the journeying is just, you're just going from A to B to C to D to E to F that quickly. Holy crap. And then the Imperium is just hot on their trails all the time. But it feels like there was supposed to be a distancing between some other places, and they wanted to make it sound like, oh, this is on the other edge of the galaxy, but then they just go there, and then the Imperium just goes there, and it's like it takes less than a minute for any of these people to really get to any place. So the sense of distancing and traveling is just gone in this movie. It feels like the latter seasons of Game of Thrones. But then they're like, oh, they run into Lando, and of course you can tell it's fan servicing Lando, and Billy D's just there, not really acting, he's just there having a good time. I'll talk also about people like Leia in just a second, or roll down the line here. So Lando is like, you have to take this. He's like, hey everybody, I'm here to help out. And they're like, oh, General Lando. I'm like, I like how the Force is completely forgotten and sort of left as like a myth. And then they even talk about characters like Luke in Episode 7, like they're a myth in some ways, like they're mythicized, and yet they're like, oh, General Lando, like as soon as he shows up in this movie, which they haven't even talked about him at all in the previous two, and it's Billy D, and again, they're fan servicing here, totally bad, to a point where they're just like starry-eyed and wide, like, oh, like, wide mouth over like, General Lando's here. Yay, but the fans, no, I'm just sitting there going like, I didn't think they were going to introduce Billy D this badly, but reintroduce him this like heavy-handedly, but they did. And then he's like, you got to go find this ship, and that can get you out of here. And so they go to the ship that's on top of this rock out in the middle of, like out in the middle of the desert, and they survive like, oh no, they're immediately chased by speeder bikes, stormtroopers, but then they fall into this pit, and then you're like, well, they're obviously not dead. The movie's not going to kill them off like 30 to 45 minutes into it. The heroes are going to keep going. So they go into a pit, they encounter a giant snake rock worm, and then Rey uses her powers to heal it, and then they get to the ship, but then like apparently the bad guys are nearby but not nearby. Like the Knights of Ren have a ship that they land and go nearby, but apparently the good guys don't see them. But then like Rey steps out, I guess, on the other side of this rocky formation, but then Chewie goes down the other direction, but then immediately gets caught, and they show the Knights of Ren watching him leave. But I'm like, did they not think? But they didn't. And then like less than 5 seconds later, like Finn comes out and realizes he looks and he sees, oh no, Chewie's been taken captive. And I'm like, but the bad guys are right down there. Why didn't they just look up into the ship? Like the ship was literally right there. How did they not know how to see that, even though they could totally see? They had the higher ground and they're going to be noticed. And the bad guys are like apparently capturing Chewie, and then but then like Rey is distracted because Kylo Ren's TIE fighter in the like it's like the trailer shot where Kylo Ren's TIE fighter is like coming right for her, and then she's like runs away from it, but then she does some force leap over it and she slices his wing off, and then he crash lands, but then he steps out and they're kind of eyeing each other from like a football field away distance wise, but then Finn is like, Rey, they've captured Chewie in the ship. We've got to stop them. And I guess their ship isn't operational yet. So then Rey does some force handling with this ship trying to leave. And she's like, no, you're coming back down. You're not taking Chewie away, apparently. And then Kylo Ren is like, no, I'm going to combat your force hold on that ship as it's trying to leave. And then it gets really, really intense. And you're like, oh, no, what's going to happen? And Chewie, is he going to be okay? And then apparently... Rey suddenly shoots force lightning. She loses it and she shoots force lightning suddenly at the ship and it blows up. And then she's like, oh no, I've killed Chewie. And then they're like, crap, well, we got to go, Rey. And don't beat yourself up over it. Don't beat yourself up over it. And then like, we're led to believe like Chewie's dead. I'm just sitting there going like, wow, they're going to kill him off like that. But okay, spoiler alert, he's not dead. They find out 15 minutes later, no, it turns out he's actually alive on the ship. And I don't even remember how they find him. I think they said they sensed him or something, or they had gotten a message. I don't even like that. That's the problem. This movie went so fast that I'm trying to remember everything that was taking place, and it's like I haven't seen a movie this badly paced since like Transformers 2, and Michael Bay really screwed the pooch on that one because that was just nothing. There was no time for the jokes to breathe. There was no time to appreciate the action, and there was even a scene in this where that reminded me of 2 because Transformers 2 had random explosions happening sometimes. You didn't even see what was causing them. Just random explosions. People were slow-mo running away from them. And there was a scene in here where it was like random. It felt like there were random explosions. And I was just like, are you kidding me, dude? What is this? And there's just little moments like it is misconceived, not choreographed or shot properly. And I think the speed of it really ruined what the drama that you were like, the impact and the danger sense. I didn't really, and then there was one point where I went up to take a piss, and I came back, and my friend leaned over, and he goes, dude, don't worry about what you missed, because the movie's going to completely change direction in another 20 minutes from now, so you didn't miss anything. And I was like, okay, and we both laughed at that, because the movie kept changing pace and direction all the time. Let me rephrase that. It didn't change pace, but it kept changing up everything that was going on, all of the dramatic arcs. Like, normally, there's that 3-act curve, like, when you do like a film, right? Like there's the rising action, and then there's the big climax, and then there's a sudden drop, and then there's immediate end point. In this, it felt like there was just like it was like a little tiny like tidal wave, like cartoony ocean waves of arcs of just we got to go from this arc to this arc to this arc to this arc to this arc, and I'm like, what the fuck is happening? It's ridiculous. And then there's just other things like the pacing, and then of course you find out that as it turns out, the point in episode 2, which you could say was a subverting your expectations moment, where it turns out Rey was like, who are my parents? You find out Kylo Ren's like, you know who your parents were? They were nobodies. They were just like spice miners. They were spice traders. They were nobodies. And they sold you because they just didn't care about you. And you're like, that was a sad but very like, rug, like swept her from the rug moment, or whatever the stupid phrase is. But then it makes you realize that you don't need to be a Skywalker to have the Force. The Force goes to a number of different people. It always will, across the universe, across the galaxies. The Force is never going to just stop reaching random people. You don't need to be an important person to use the Force. And that was like, okay, now we're changing. That changed the direction for her character, but at least it made a point doing so. Like, I will actually give The Last Jedi that they made a point of the Force, and even Luke Skywalker's like almost really serious mentoring moment when he says, like, the Force is this uncontrollable energy that binds all things, and you can't stop it or do anything to keep it from untying everything together. And then that point is made by Rey going, my parents were nobodies and they didn't care about me. And then you're like, okay, but the Force hits everybody, including little kids at the very end who were doing like Force grabbing the broom on the other side of the hallway and stuff like that. But in this movie, they immediately sweep you, like they flip the rug again from her, and they go, okay, well, your parents were nobodies, but apparently your grandfather was Emperor Palpatine, which also makes me question who her parents actually were, and why like I guess it's just implied that they knew that things were going to be a problem because their Palpatine was their dad, or rather it was one of them's dads, I guess, because it's not implied that they're brother sister, they're husband and wife or something. But they barely touch on that. They literally just in your face go, "You are Emperor Palpatine's granddaughter. Congratulations." And I'm just sitting there going like, "Are you kidding me? Are you just going to throw that at us and undo what 2 did?" And 2 Episode 8 felt like it was undoing stuff from Episode 7, and now Episode 9 is undoing things from Episode 8. And it's like, what is going on with Disney? Where's the executive oversight here? You literally have Kevin Feige controlling the Marvel success from the top down, and you have learned from that model. It has been like great for that model, not just from the quality of the storytelling for the Marvel movies, but in terms of the money making, because things were flowing into things and everything felt connected. It was good. And I'm sitting there with their Star Wars. It's like, are they just saying we're going to do the opposite? Because it's not working. It didn't work in this movie. It was having a hard time with 8. I don't know what to do here. Well, anyway, it's just, and then there's these epic moments, and then there was a point where, like, I will give the movie weird credit, because there was a point where they have C-3PO, and they're like, "We need you to decipher the Sith language," and he's like, "I can't. My programming will not allow me." So they go and find a hacker dude, which is like this little cute alien guy, and then of course he's speaking in like alien baby babble, because that's funny. Because that's funny, I guess. Because I was like, well, technically, I guess they've done that in Star Wars, and the original trilogy did that, kind of here and there. But then they do the thing, or then they have this dramatic moment where it's like, C-3PO is like, they go, well, there's a chance that there's a good chance it'll wipe his memory, and then C-3PO will have basically amnesia. But they kind of treat it more like they're treating it like he's killing his character. And I'm also sitting there thinking like, but the way they did it with the lack of finesse, it's almost the complete opposite to Blade Runner, when Rutger Hauer's character, that combat replicant, he has that monologue at the end where he's like, "I've seen things that you wouldn't believe, but all those moments will be lost in time like tears in the rain." And it's literally raining while he's saying this. And there's this dramatic moment where he's like, "We all ultimately have to appreciate life regardless of the path that others are walking it, and we do only have..." It's like a moment where he's realizing that there's a tragedy to death. There's a human and even an inhuman appreciation for the morality or mortality and things like that, and it's done well. In this case, it's like the C-3PO, a robot. You could argue it's like kind of the similar synth situation here, but with C-3PO, they're kind of like, oh crap, it's not going to be the same C-3PO anymore. And then C-3PO dramatically looks at all of his friends, and you actually get to see the humanizing face of C-3PO go, and it's almost like he wants to tear up, and he even says, I'm going to take one last look at all of my friends around me, because there's a chance that I'll... And I think that they were trying to find a way to kill him off, but instead I guess they just set it to where it's like, no, he's just going to have his memory wiped, but he's still going to... But the thing is, and they do it, and then he does the Sith language part, and they're like, oh crap, we got to go, it's getting dramatic, and they're like, oh no, C-3PO. But then he wakes back up a few minutes later, and he's like, hello, I'm C-3PO, human cyborg relations, who might you be? And he's saying that to like R2-D2. But the emotional impact is lost, and it's semi-funny, but it's not. But it shouldn't be funny. It should be like, who are you? Oh, hello, I'm C-3PO, cyborg relations. And then they all go, C-3PO, just know that you're... Like, there was no moment where they were like, C-3PO, we don't have time to explain everything, but just know that you're our friend, and you did a job for us just now, and we'll fill you in later. Like, there was no time to sort of mourn the loss of C-3PO. But yet, I also felt kind of emotional. I can't believe I'm saying this. This movie did have me get emotional over the potential death or loss of C-3PO, a character that I just never really ever cared about. In fact, he was kind of for the longest time a joke character until they invented Jar Jar Binks, and then he took over as the silly joke character. But still, C-3PO is one of these beloved legacy figures. And I was actually starting to get a little emotional, like, oh crap, are you literally going to... For some reason, I legitimately started feeling for C-3PO. But they didn't kill him off, they just wiped his memory, and don't worry, he's still going to be the same goofy, hello, I'm C-3PO, human cyborg relations like robot protocol guy. So he's still technically going to be kind of comedy relief, but again, the movie, the momentum of the movie can't allow you to appreciate the comedy moments anyway. Very few of them. I couldn't laugh at anything. It was sad, it was frustrating. So there's moments like that where I was taken by surprise, but then they have other weird dramatic moments, and then... the epic culmination at the end where Ray, like Ray and Kylo Ren and Ray are confronting Palpatine after epic dramatic fights, and then you realize that Kylo Ren actually wants to be a good guy because his mom force ghosted herself to go to him and say, "Son, don't fight Ray," and then Ray wins the battle, and then like there's a memory of Han Solo, but it's not a Force Ghost moment because otherwise that would be noticeable. It comes in here like it's legitimately Han Solo. Harrison Ford in physical form comes to him and he's like, "Son, you've always," it does the parent thing where he's like, you've always made me proud, and I know you're going to be the good man, the great man that will happen one day, but let that be this moment." And it's like his son is guilting himself. It's like his subconscious, I guess, is guilting himself, but it's definitely not Force stuff. Although I guess you could argue it could be Force stuff, but if that's the case, then Han Solo would come back as a Force ghost. In fact, that's the problem. They should have had Han Solo come back as a Force ghost, and then Kylo says, "But you were never sensitive with the Force." And then Han said, "Well, it turns out the Force was that luck that I kind of was making fun of many, many moons ago." And then he goes, "Son, and then that would have still made it would have been more impactful. He would have been, "Son, it turns out the Force is here, and you are very strong with it. I can see that now because I'm no longer here. So I'm going to use this time to remind you, your mother and I want you to know that you are going to be cool and you're going to be a great person one day, but you've been stumbling recently, and we know that you can change it, and let that be this moment." But instead, it's more like him just kind of forcing Ren to be a little emotional, but then Kylo then eventually says, like, "My name is Benjamin now, and I'm now going to be a good guy and stop Snoke and figure out, and I don't want Rey to become the new Emperor because that's basically what he wants for her, and she's going to be tempted to become the new Emperor." I'm not going to lie, I barely remember the ending to this because I was sitting there and not really attuning to any of it, going, "Okay, well, I just know there's going to be a dramatic resolution." So, and the sad part is the fact that I'm like going, "When's the dramatic resolution?" I don't want to sound like a jaded asshole, and maybe I am a jaded asshole, or maybe I've just seen this thing over and over and over again, and it's just not impacting me. I don't know. Maybe it's somewhere in between, but I just don't care about. The resolution happens, and of course the good guys win, and then a sacrificial moment for Kylo Ren to make sure that Rey survives. To thank her for saving him and his soul and his better nature that he then suddenly woke up and realized. Side note, he does fight his own Knights of Ren, but just like the General Phasma fight in 8, it only lasts not very long, and they get their butts kicked pretty much, but not really. But who gives a crap? The Knights of Ren didn't go anywhere, just like General Phasma didn't go anywhere. I will say, I largely feel like it just got epic. It started throwing things in our face, so largely I do think 9 missed the mark, but it did try. It did bring out some really old hats in order to make crap work, because Star Wars is just old hat. It's new hat guy looking at old hat going, "Oh, hey, I know what this is." That's basically where Star Wars is now. I said it before, and I don't care. I will say positives about 9. If you want a long, action-oriented Star Wars flick, I mean, from start to finish, if that's what you've been wanting for a while, congratulations, you're going to get it. I do like how they played with the Force a bit. They had them literally playing around with I guess planar shifting or teleporting or making themselves exist in different areas, or Force projecting without projecting. I don't know. It's hard to kind of describe semi-teleporty things that they're doing with the Force. And there's an interesting lightsaber duel where Kylo and Rey are confronting each other, and she's on his ship and he's down on that ice planet. And then they lightsaber duel each other, but they're teleporting around and kind of going between locations because the Force was giving them. It was kind of hinting that that's what the Force could do in 8. That's a new area that hasn't really been explored. And here they're legit sword fighting, but then they phase away from each other, and he's like, "Oh, you're on my ship. We got to get back to my ship now." And then she's like, "Crap, he knows I'm on the ship. We got to go." And I'm like, "Oh, so they can teleport and fight." So little things like that with the Force I found interesting. And then there's a moment where I think it was Princess Leia. Again, this is the problem. It went so fast. Princess Leia, in the last moment, she puts her lightsaber out, and then Kylo Ren, well, Benjamin now, accepts who he is, and literally reaches behind himself or whatever to pull out the lightsaber that's now in his possession that he can use to fight off. And I guess he's using his mother's lightsaber. I don't even remember. That's the problem. Princess Leia's apparent lightsaber was given to her by Luke Skywalker. But I don't even remember did she give it to him, or like this. That's the problem. So much was going on from start to finish that I'm really having a hard time remembering some of it. And the thing is, again, I probably should have waited a week to put this video out, but I want that to, those moments that are supposed to be able, you're supposed to be able to recall. It's so difficult, and from a week from now, I would still be confused. I'd have to go re-watch the movie, and I'm not spending money to go and re-watch a movie for that long that I just don't really care that much about to really get some of these points right. But the problem is, I shouldn't have to do that. You should be able to generally remember a movie. Anyway. But I do like what they did with the Force. They kind of explored more parts of it. They do make a point. The reason that Kylo and Rey, well, Benjamin and Rey, whatever. I'm just going to start calling them Benji now. Benji and Rey, the reason that they've always had some weird connection is because apparently there's a Force diode, or there's a diode in the Force, and it's both of them, and they need to sort of reconvene in order to balance the Force, or at least subsume each other to balance it. But then, like, which is interesting. It's playing around with like the metaphysics of Star Wars, which is one of the interesting parts in my opinion. I do like those parts because the Force shouldn't just be about I fling my lightsaber across the planet, or I jump really fast, or run really high, or do levitation or something, or telekinesis or whatever. The Force should be other things explored with it. So I do like that the Star Wars franchise is willing to kind of do other things with it. I suppose that's one of the interesting things they did in Rogue One, where they had Donnie Yen's character who was like a priest of the Force, but it's obvious that he wasn't like a super badass Force user. He was just, it was sort of like a spirituality. It was a faith. It was a religion. It was a paradigm. And he was like just a simple mortal man who was using it. So things like that are cool. And then 9, they definitely played around with, there's more things you can do with the Force. Like you can literally transport yourself if you're in connection with it. And it isn't just Force choking and lightning people, even though of course you can. Anyway. So there are interesting moments like that, but I don't think there's any solid good character moments and that I really, really enjoyed. And I did get emotional with C-3PO potentially dying, and I don't know where that came from, and things like that. So, but I also realized that, but like Billy D, they just fan service Billy D the entire time. And then there's some really cheap, dramatic, in-your-face moments that like, the Resistance thinks that they're losing the war, and then suddenly like an absurd amount of ships come in to fight, you know, the First Order's like huge array of Star Destroyers and stuff like that. And then I think it was Rose, which by the way, Rose's character is just barely here. And I was like, wait, isn't Rose and Finn supposed to be attracted to each other? But then they introduced a new character for Finn to kind of appreciate, because he was like, yeah, we were both in the same kid unit when we were conscripted by the Imperium. And I think it was implied that they were supposed to have a romantic moment, but I was like, but doesn't Rose love Finn? And I didn't really, maybe I got up and took another piss and missed that moment. But to me, I was sitting there going like, wait, so you're going to have a young black man go after a young black woman instead of a young Asian woman? To me, that seems like a little regressive, isn't it? I don't know. Maybe it isn't. I feel like that's regressive because it's supposed to be, aren't we supposed to be at that point where it doesn't matter what somebody looks like? We should appreciate their personhood and their soul. But it's kind of like, well, I guess black people are, it's kind of one of those subtly offensive things that's not thought out, where it's like, well, I guess black people are going to only be able to fall in love with black people. Sorry, Rose. Or, I don't know, like, I just thought that was stupid. Like, have her there as just a combat character or something, but then have, like, Rose and Finn, like, kissing, like, where, I don't know, basically, like, that's what I'm going to ask. Where did that romance go? Because I thought that's where it was going, which would have been fine. But Rose is barely handled in the show. She's shown a few times. She does do some action-y stuff. And then there's a point where, when those ships show up, Rose and Finn are like, you know, what is that the Resistance? And then I think it's Rose who says, like, no, it's just people. And they were trying to make a point of, like, you know, there's going to always be more good guys than bad guys, and they'll always show up to fight evil at the end of the day. I guess that's great. It's a great message. It just felt like it was so cheaply done. Anyway, there's all kinds of moments in this movie that I have to, like, if I did sit down and go and rewatch, I'd have to make some notes about. But I didn't really have fun with it. 1 second here. Just shutting my door. But largely, I do think that 9 kind of just missed the mark. It was trying to cram so much into one movie. It was just non-stop action and full throttle the whole time, which was a little annoying and disappointing. And I will say one thing, because I got into, like, me and my friends, as soon as the movie was done, we all stepped outside the theater and were chatting about, like, holy crap. And one of my friends was like, I don't toot my own horn when it comes to these kind of things. I don't want to sound arrogant, but I could have written a better Star Wars movie than this thing, because this was just it was so absurdly actiony, nothing, like, just so many arcs and so many twists and turns, and they brought back Palpy. Basically, we were all kind of just making fun of the movie. We did mention there were some cool moments, and then there were some moments that others were like, no, that's a justifiable moment, and others were like, no, that moment was dumb. Why did they call back to that? Why didn't they do this? It's whatever. Like, big surprise, Star Wars movie's done, and we're all kind of going, why did it suck so much? But maybe that's just my friends and I, but based off of the reviews and stuff I'm seeing on the internet, there's not a lot of positivity for this movie. Except for, like, the people that say there's a few people that I do, from what I can tell, that fell in love with it because it's like, there is so much going on, but for the rest of us, we're like, holy crap, it just doesn't let up at any point. And that's just that's just cheap amateur filmmaking. Like, you got to pace the movie out a little bit. Oh, and then other moments, like cheap Abrams fapping to Spielberg moments, where there were so many moments where, like, the camera was, like, zooming in on somebody's face so they can say something dramatic, and it was like the camera was constantly moving, worse than any Spielberg movie I've ever seen. What the heck? I'm like, Abrams, what? It's like, that, like, you learned your lesson with the lens flare. Now you need to learn your lesson with the camera. Like, park it down and let the scene unfold a little bit. You don't need to dramatically zoom in on everybody's face all the time. Oh, and then there were just a few other cheap moments. Like, there's moments where they, like, just lit somebody's eyes, and you can tell, like, now, some people, like, normally that's done for dramatic effect, or they want to really focus on that person's emotion. But a lot of times, if it's not done well, it can be really distracting. And I'm thinking back to Star Wars. I'm like, Star Wars was never known for doing those kind of, like, eye-lit eye shots. And the fact that I saw it in this movie was like, were they just, like, pressed for time or something? I don't know. It felt like, because I don't recall the new movies ever trying that. Maybe I need to go back and rewatch them. But I just felt like little cheap moments like that. Like, they're effective, but that's when you can't, like, find other ways to light the room and the surroundings and clean things up in post or whatever. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but I just felt like there were cheap moments like that of camera zooming in on your face for dramatic effect, pause, where the bad guys are coming moment. Like, they don't need to do that. It happened so frequently that I almost thought it was a joke. That's my problem. I didn't know if there was, like, if this movie, like, there were parts of it where I was like, is this movie really doing this? This is amateur hour. What is this? Oh, well, what am I going to say? What are they going to say? What are you going to do? The movie had a lot of money behind it. And to be fair, I tried to lower my expectations for this movie. And I think that most Star Wars fans at this point are either they begrudgingly will watch Star Wars because they grew up with it and they know that it's never going to be perfect. And then there are the diehard fans where, like, Star Wars can do no wrong and I'm always going to appreciate it no matter what. And I know that, it's a franchise, like I said before, that I grew up with. It went downhill, then it started to go back uphill, but now I just feel like it's just plateauing in a level that is never going to be able to get to the quality and the majesty of the original, Golden Trilogy, but also they're wanting to harken back to it, and then sometimes they can be just cheap callbacks. It's whatever, it happens. Gin time. Anyway. There's probably other things I can nitpick, but I don't want this movie. I don't want to do a 2-hour video about this. I really want to end it soon. I will say one thing, because me and my friend and I got into an argument when we got out of the theater about. I guess he was saying that it's okay to digitally restore people, and like in movies, like obviously Carrie Fisher passed away while they were making this movie, which is sad because, again, we're losing legacy people. We still have Mark Hamill. Oh, and then earlier this year, the guy who played Chewie also died. So we've lost 2 of the original cast members. We're down to Han, who in the story is dead, although he comes back in this movie, I guess, just to round things out. And we still have Mark Hamill, but now he's a Force ghost, which actually kind of fits. So we lost half the original cast, kind of. And, of course, Peter Cushing, the guy who played Obi-Wan, Sir, whatever his name is, he's dead too. James Earl Jones is still around, but you can't really bring Vader back that much. Anyway, but I guess we got into an argument because he basically said, like, well, there were some cheap moments where they did it here in this movie, but it's okay to do the CGI restoration thing. And I disagreed with him. I said, if an actor dies, unless the movie is more than 50%, I'll say this: if a movie is more than 50% done, and you kind of can't recast him, then I do think you'd have to at least try and do the thing where find a stand-in, you work with what audio recording you have, and just try to fill that person's void. But if the movie is less than 50% done, or you've shot less than 50% of what you need from that actor who may no longer be with us, I think there's nothing wrong with saying rest in peace actor who we started making the movie with, and then just recast them. Because my argument is two things. One, there's a lot of hungry, starving actors out there, and I know because I used to be one, and I used to wait for that awesome moment of potentially being cast as a really cool, memorable character, because that's what a lot of actors want to do. Of course, a lot of actors are just for the craft of acting, but some of us that jumped in said, I would love to be the next Han Solo, or fill in the blank, right? Or in this case, it would be Princess Leia. I do think that it's okay to recast them and work with a physical actor, because when you do digital restoration, it's like when you give away somebody's job to a robot. It's the same thing, in my opinion. And I kind of feel like, well, what are you going to do with those human beings who are alive who can do that role really well? You know what I mean? It just kind of bothers me. And the biggest sin, in my opinion, was, again, Rogue One. Peter Cushing, was it Peter Cushing? I think it's Peter Cushing. Peter Cushing played Grand Moff Tarkin, and instead of just finding an actor that can act like and be like Peter Cushing, or I don't want to say impersonate him, because some people might think that's cheap, but at minimum, if they said, well, we have Grand Moff Tarkin, let's find an actor that we can kind of style up and say, you're now going to be the new Grand Moff Tarkin. Instead, they said, no, we're legit going to put Peter Cushing's CGI face on somebody in a mocap screen. And that really bothered me, because I was like, at a minimum, you couldn't find an actor that would have been like, I can impersonate Peter Cushing, or at least find an actor that can still do that role. You know what I mean? Because again, there's a lot of starving actors out there. And I guess me and my friend were yelling at each other, because I was like, when Harry Potter 2 was finished, Richard Harris, the guy who played Dumbledore, died. So instead, when 3 came out, they got Michael Gambison, I believe. I believe that's his name. Might be wrong. But I was sitting there going, by your logic, what that means is, for Harry Potter 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, they should have just had a Richard. They should have just had a guy in an outfit, but then green skulled his face, and then put digital Richard Harris over it. And that's what they should have done, because Richard Harris played Dumbledore, and obviously we can't recast a role by that logic. And for me, I was like, no, that's BS. They just recast him. They got a different actor. And I also think, now I will say that I do think recasting can be done wrong. It's not the, I mean, I'm like, me and my friend was like, dude, they started making the movie with her, she croaked, and the CGI restoration and then finding somebody that sounds like her is perfectly fine. And I disagree with that. Now, granted, my understanding was that she died shortly after they started filming, so there was more than enough time to recast it. However, I might be wrong about that, so I'll totally concede that if they did film more than the 50% mark with her and they went, crap, we can't recast her, then I don't mind that. And if that is the case, I do need to apologize to my friend. But if that's not the case, then they need to just recast it and say rest in peace, and then they would just have the title screen at that part say Princess Leia was played by Carrie Fisher and some other actress in her peer group that we hadn't seen in a while. And then, there would always be saying dedicated, and the movie would be dedicated to Carrie Fisher and the guy who played Chewbacca. Again, I think, is it Anthony Daniels? No, Anthony Daniels played C-3PO. Well, anyway, I do think that it's better to just recast it with a person. And honestly, I think even if you're after 50%, you can still do that and just find somebody that can act and impersonate them, because there's a lot of good impersonators out there, or at least people that act like them and they can still fill in the role. I think there's nothing wrong with that. But my friends are kind of excited to see that technology, I guess. So when you saw really young Carrie Fisher at the end of Rogue One, the very end of Rogue One, people were like, oh my God, that's her. And she looks like she did when she was, in her 20s, when she was really young. And that was such a long time ago. But for me, I'm just thinking from the actor's struggle standpoint. There still are, and there always will be a lot of talented, hungry actors that, at a minimum, can play that person very well, or can just say, "I'm going to take the role myself." And I back up that point with Shakespeare has been around for centuries, but just because the original troupe that Shakespeare worked with is gone, it's not that we can't retell Macbeth or King Lear or Henry V or The Merchant of Venice or whatever just because those actors are gone. Those productions continue and they're remade and they're recast, and like obviously everybody is a recast for a Shakespearean production now, by that logic. So, but I mean, I don't know. We got into a little bit of a, "Are you kidding me, dude?" And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" That, and I think I yelled at my. Granted, we had some beer when we were watching the movie. I was like, "Dude, it's not a valid argument." And he probably was getting kind of pissed at that. This is my bad. Whatever. I had a lot of, I had a strong porter in me. Okay, what do you want? And no, don't make a gay joke out of that. Or if you want, that's fine. Oops. What did I do to myself? I screwed myself over with that porter. Doing things to my butt. Anyway, so a little bit of gin time. Hold on. So I will just to recap. I do think it's okay to recast the actor. Now, to fill up my point, I remember when the Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus came out, and apparently they filmed all the non-Imaginarium parts with Heath Ledger, and then he died, which of course that was tragic. Granted, The Dark Knight hadn't come out yet, so they had finished The Dark Knight, thank God. And definitely, God, Heath did a bang up job there. Everybody knows that, who has seen it. But then they said for the Imaginarium, they said, "Crap, we haven't gotten to shoot him at all with the Imaginarium parts." And this is the part where recasting, I do think, can be a problem. What they decided to do was they recast his character. I guess he goes in a total of 3 times. So they got 3 completely different well-known actors to basically play Heath Ledger's character. And the first one was Johnny Depp, who now is kind of turning into a persona non grata in Hollywood, even though he's still acting, he's still doing modeling ads. And then they had Jude Law, who is a good actor. And then the last person who I think his character ended up dying was, his character died at the end, which was Colin Farrell, who played him the 3rd time when he goes in the Imaginarium. But I noticed there is a problem of we recast this one really good actor, but I guess they wanted it to be like a actor homage thing by saying we're going to get 3 really good actors to sort of play him these 3 separate times in the movie. But the problem is that none of them really tried to act like Heath Ledger did. They just sort of acted like themselves in that one part, when they were supposed to be either supposed to be mysterious or just like start like wide-eyed. I guess like Johnny Depp's version was like he was just kind of taking things in, but he was really casual. But the problem I noticed is that when you saw Heath Ledger in the movie, when it was him in I guess the real world parts, the camera didn't really focus on Heath Ledger's face very much. It didn't. In fact, it focused more on his full body. There were more full body shots than face and head shots for Heath Ledger. But then when they go to the Imaginarium, they really focused on the face of, oh, it's Johnny Depp. Oh, it's Jude Law. Oh, it's Colin Farrell. So I felt like that was just a missed mark opportunity. But that was an issue where technically they fulfilled my criteria, where they recast him. But that's the lesson learned. Just recast him with one person, dress him up like him as that actor. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with having someone fill the role. It's fine. And we're still going to pay attention to the story. And as long as we respect that actor or that actress who is portraying that person, if it really doesn't look right, obviously, well, okay, if you have the technology now to do the CGI Force Ghost, the CGI recap or re-mocap, I don't know exactly what the best term is for this even, but if they're going to do the face plant, like the digital face plant and head plant, and try and use sound bites that they can, okay, but if it's early on in the movie, just say, oh crap, we're going to pay respect to this role and this actor, and we're going to recast them, and we're always, and of course make sure it says, like, as soon as the movie's done, in loving, or even when the movie starts, because we know, in loving memory of, that actor, Carrie Fisher, Heath Ledger, whatever. And then just have another person keep doing that character. Because ultimately the show has to go on, and the character has to do what's needed in the story. If you can rewrite it and it's an improvement, great, but it does feel risky. So that's just where I'm at in that boat. My friend and I disagreed on that, but I think our other friend was like, so I see your point, Wes, because there are a lot of starving actors and they could do the role, but I also see your point of if you can green screen bring them back, that's probably more consistent, especially if it's a legacy character like Carrie Fisher playing Princess Leia. Like that's a character that's been around for generations now, and she got big on that character. It's like, okay, fair point. I'll concede that I may not be right here, but I just say I take the side of the actors and go, please find a starving actor and give them the opportunity. They would kill for it. I would have killed for it at the time when I was an actor, but I'm kind of on a different, I'm now in the viewing position at this point. So it's a different mode. Anyway, so I want to end this video pretty quick here. Overall, I do think 9 is on its own just a very nonstop action-oriented, and it does go into an epic direction. Movie. I think that it was cheap in the directions that it took. I think that it wasn't shot very well. I don't think the jokes were all that funny, and I do think they were not sure how to handle certain characters and character beats and character moments, like just for example C-3PO, and also Rose and things like that. I do largely feel like the momentum is going to just consistently be made fun of by the rest of the internet, so I've already said enough about it. It was way too fast-paced. I think they shot way too much and then crammed in and edited everything, and so that it felt like one long roller coaster, which was not fun for me. I like action movies, and Star Wars as an action movie is fine. It's great. It just didn't stop. It was full throttle the whole time. So, and I've said I'm going to keep repeating that if I keep saying this. So, I'm not going to grade this movie. I will recommend it if you want to end this trilogy. But if you're not sure if you want to go see Star Wars Episode 9, if you're really not attached to it or you're really not sure, I would honestly say save your money. Because another thing we need to remind ourselves is every time you spend money on a ticket, unless you leave early enough to demand your money back, you're basically feeding that beast. And that is a risk, of course, when you go to a movie. I mean, like, we've always known that. But it's just be careful because if you're not sure, then just don't spend the money. Or if you want to watch it with your friend and then go, you know what, I actually really liked it, then you can always go out and get your own copy or download it. That's a venue now. And unfortunately, I wish there was a way, and I wish we lived in a world and we had a culture that understood, like, if you go and view something, you don't have to pay for it at the end unless you really support it. Unfortunately, I don't think most people are going to do that. I think most people are going to be human, and they're going to be like, I would prefer to see this thing free. I don't want to spend any money because I got to spend money on resources and things that are necessary, like necessary goods, like water. I got to pay the water bill. I got to buy groceries. I got to make sure there's gas in my car. Unfortunately, that's not possible. I kind of wish we lived in a world like that, or at least had a culture that was more responsive to that. But I don't think that's ever going to be a thing. So anyway, bottom line, if you like Star Wars, you'll probably like this. If you're one of the critical fans, I don't think you're going to like it. If you're not sure, save your money. Watch it with your friends through their streaming service for free or something like that. At least that way you can view it and not feel like you're directly giving money to the mouse here, especially when they make trash like this, in my opinion. Anyway, that's all I have to say. I'm pretty sure other people are going to come out on the internet now. Everybody's probably going to make similar points, better points, maybe worse points. I will say, I do think Star Wars has changed. I said that in my last Star Wars video about this movie. I do think Star Wars is just a different monster now, and I will leave off on the Quentin Tarantino approach to... years ago, I had an issue of Wizard magazine, and they said, hey, Quentin Tarantino, you're a great director, and you're getting a really good name for yourself. Have you thought about jumping into, like, the Star Wars genre, since that's starting to get really big? And if you did, what would you do? And Quentin Tarantino said, I love comic books and these superheroes. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a way to please every single one of these fans, especially when you have really iconic characters. So I would prefer to just make my own original stories, and because you just can't please the fans. And I do think that harkens back now more than ever with Star Wars, where it's like, you're never going to be able to bring the old fans, the mid-generation fans, and the new fans to like anything that's coming out now, because they're going to have crotchety curmudgeons like me that's just like, well, back in my day, there was episode 4, 5, and 6, and we liked it because all the characters and moments were well told and iconic and yada, yada, yada. But then you're going to have the prequel trilogy fans, and then you're going to have the new trilogy fans. But I will say this, the TV shows are doing great. And that's all I got to say. Well, anyway, thank you for listening to this video. If you listened to it and watched it all the way through, like and subscribe. Um, uh, don't party too hard. Be responsible. Be cool. And also, don't do anything douchebaggy like shoot up a movie theater because you didn't like the movie or because you want to make a statement. Please, let's just be cool and mature out there. Love one another. The holiday season is coming to its epic climax. And just everybody have a happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa. If there's other people out, or if you're a raging atheist, you know what? Just have a good winter. We can all have a good winter and be cool with each other. And hopefully the weather's not going to be too bad wherever you are right now. But if things are falling apart around you, hopefully you can hopefully you can pull yourself through it. And if you're having Christmas time blues or something like that, it happens. The world is an awesome place. And if you're not sure what to do, go see a good movie. Just don't see this movie if you can. Okay, that's enough of me being a smartass. Thanks for watching. I'll hopefully have newer videos with more poignant topics in the future, and just felt like I needed to put this out there. So peace out, one love, and all that good stuff.